They didn't even bother moving the bodies to the cemetery sometimes. Just dug a shallow grave right behind the number 10 saloon, covered it with the sloppy clay, and kept dealing the poker hand. The ground was already saturated. Deadwood, 1876. You call it the Wild West. I call it the last truly honest city America ever produced. You might think the chaos of that gold rush camp, where an estimated 25 to 50% of the initial population didn't survive the first year, was the antithesis of modern life. You would be wrong. The brutality of Deadwood reveals the cowardice of our meticulously ordered, sanitized world. This wasn't some slow institutional decay. This was immediate visceral consequence. You insulted the wrong man, you died before sundown. You cheated at faro, the dealer might just shoot you over the table. There was no 911, there were no lawyers, there were no social safety nets, and certainly no tedious protective regulations. The law was the speed of your draw, the depth of your pockets, and the thickness of your skin. It was pure, unadulterated human nature given free rein under the promise of instant wealth. It wasn't just a place without laws. It was a place where human value was ruthlessly market-driven. Gold was the only currency, and everything else, morality, loyalty, life itself, was wildly volatile. And yet, we romanticize it. We watch the TV shows, we read the history books, and we yearn for that grit, that freedom. We secretly admire the sheer, unfiltered agency of a man like Wild Bill Hickok, even knowing he was shot in the back, holding aces and eights. But I sincerely doubt any of you could survive 1 week there. We are too soft now. We are too dependent on the system we simultaneously claim to despise. We live in a massive, sprawling cage of comfort built from technology and managed data, protected by screens and metrics, and we mistake that comfortable custody for true liberty. The reality is that we traded our sovereignty for convenience. Deadwood was expensive. Everything, from a gallon of water to a single bullet, cost a fortune because the supply chain was a death trap. But at least you knew who owned you, the Black Hills themselves, and your own poor decisions. Today, you don't even know who holds the leash. It's invisible. It's algorithmic. It's insidious. If you are tired of the comfortable lie, if you value truth over the illusion of security, you belong in the conversation we're about to have. Deadwood was terrifying because it told you the truth about yourself instantly. Your character was tested every morning when you woke up in a muddy, freezing shack or a dusty flophouse. Weakness was purged almost immediately. When you hear the stories of Calamity Jane, drinking rot-gut whiskey, swearing like a dockhand, and trying to nurse victims of smallpox, you realize that people there had to be multivariate. They couldn't specialize in just being sensitive or just being ruthless. They had to be everything all at once just to stay horizontal. Contrast that with our hyper-specialized society, where we complain about slow internet and call it suffering. We have outsourced every single aspect of survival. Growing food, defending territory, maintaining health, even thinking critically. Deadwood demanded competence across the board. If your rifle jammed, you died. If your cabin burned down, you froze. If your business failed, you starved. There was no middle management. There was only success and oblivion. That brutal simplicity is what we miss, even if we are too terrified to admit it. We crave the high stakes because our modern lives have become utterly stakesless. They are cushioned, controlled, and ultimately meaningless. The question isn't why Deadwood collapsed under the weight of eventual governance. The question is why we prefer the safety of the institution over the chaos of self-governance. We fear freedom because freedom demands ownership of the results, and nobody wants to sign that particular contract. We look at the brutality of Deadwood, the constant threat of cholera, the immediate violence, the sheer cold, and we smugly congratulate ourselves on our progress. We feel superior because we have running water and 2-day shipping. But here is the mechanism you refuse to see. The people in Deadwood owned their suffering. They chose the risk, knowing the odds were stacked against them, and that choice imbued their daily struggle with a terrifying, potent meaning. Now we just rent our comfort. We rent our housing, we rent our transportation, we rent our entertainment, and worse, we rent our sense of purpose from systems that view us as nothing more than renewable, compliant energy sources. Think about that next time you tap your phone. Who is actually making the deposit? If you want to know why so many people are wandering around utterly devoid of fire, unable to connect with anything real, unable to even articulate their dissatisfaction, it's because the system has expertly stripped away the requirement for primary skills. We have specialized ourselves into dependency. You, the graphic designer, cannot filter your own water. You, the investment banker, cannot build a secure shelter. You, the coder, cannot defend yourself against immediate physical threat. You are a finely tuned widget in a vast, indifferent machine. Deadwood demanded generalized resilience. Modern life celebrates specific, highly perishable, and easily replaceable credentials. That isn't progress. That is deliberate domestication. This comfort, this soft cage of compliance, is seductive precisely because it removes the agony of choice. Choice demands responsibility. Responsibility demands effort. And effort, real effort, is agonizing. Most people would gladly trade the chaos of absolute freedom for the prescribed path of absolute security, even if that path leads straight to the cubicle and the crushing knowledge that your entire worth is tied up in a quarterly performance review that some algorithm generated. Nobody wants to be a hero when they can be a highly compensated subject. The modern institution, whether it is the corporate bureaucracy or the regulatory state, exists to monetize your lack of ownership. They are middlemen charging a premium on every necessity you've outsourced. Did you know the complexity of tax law isn't designed to fairly distribute wealth? It's designed to ensure you require an expensive professional to navigate a system that should be simple enough for a minor with a third-grade education to understand. Complexity is their moat. Ignorance is their capital. The very architecture of our modern world demands you remain stupidly specialized and utterly reliant on the specialist class. Deadwood had snake oil salesmen. We have PhDs selling us the exact same illusion, that they know better than you do how to run your life. If you are seeing this, if these words are clicking in a way that feels disruptive and maybe a little dangerous, it's because you recognize the scaffolding of the lie. You are refusing the sedative. We are building community right here, a refuge for those who prioritize radical clarity over institutional comfort. Join the few who are willing to look into the abyss and understand that the abyss is just the reflection of the system they built around us. Now, look at the concept of risk itself. In the Black Hills, risk was visceral. A bad hand in poker, a poorly maintained mule, a sudden blizzard. You face the consequence immediately. You fixed it or you cease to exist. Today, risk is aggregated, abstracted, and delayed. We take massive systemic risks, inflating currencies, racking up debt, degrading the foundational trust in our institutions, and we outsource the consequence to the future. Someone else will pay. Your grandchildren will pay. That delay makes us feel safe. It's not safety. It's cowardice wrapped in quarterly earnings reports. We live in a society obsessed with minimizing individual failure while actively maximizing systemic catastrophe. We are terrified of the small personal fire, so we build a system guaranteed to trigger the nuclear meltdown. You watching this need to ask yourself, what is the one core competence you still possess that cannot be automated, cannot be outsourced, and cannot be regulated? If the lights went out, if the internet died, if the supply chain truly broke, what percentage of your life could you sustain based purely on your own two hands and your own wits? Be brutally honest. Don't hide behind your college diploma or your retirement fund. Those are just paper promises in a coming storm. The truth is, most of us are far more vulnerable than the greenest tenderfoot arriving in Deadwood in 1876. They understood the gravity of their situation. We live under the delusion of control. We have substituted political participation for self-sufficiency. We think we are making meaningful change by voting for one set of specialized managers over another set of specialized managers. We argue passionately about the color of the paint on the cage walls, forgetting we are still inside the cage. Deadwood didn't care who the mayor was, or if the telegraph line went down. Deadwood cared if the gold was still panning out, and if the claim was secured, and if the guy across the bar was going to pull a derringer. Those were primary concerns. existential stakes. Ours are tertiary distractions designed to keep us arguing with each other, while the true mechanisms of control continue to turn quietly in the background. Stop looking at the surface friction. See the gears grinding underneath. Will we ever return to that kind of raw, uncompromising self-reliance? I sincerely doubt it. The price of admission, that terrifying, clarifying exposure to real consequence, is simply too high for the modern psyche. We are addicted to the cushion. We are hooked on the insurance policy provided by Big Everything. We prefer the slow rot of bureaucratic meaninglessness to the terrifying vitality of genuine freedom. We claim to hate the system, yet we cling desperately to its perceived protections. We are not prisoners yearning for escape. We are pets, complaining about the quality of the kibble while still relying on the master's hand. This is the final, definitive verdict on our modern condition. We didn't choose safety, we chose submission, and the difference is everything. The reality of that submission is enforced not by brute force, but by quiet, pervasive convenience. We made the choice easy. Choice. They just needed to ensure the cost of rebellion was higher than the cost of compliance. What is the biggest hook? The mortgage? The student loan? That car payment stretching 7 years into the future? That's the anchor chain. Your modern cage isn't forged from iron bars. It is woven from comfort and obligation, a terrifyingly complex tapestry of perceived needs that necessitates your continuous participation in the great machine until your last breath. You can't quit. You can't walk away. Try it. Go cold turkey. The system doesn't send the Gestapo to your door. It simply cuts off your access to food, shelter, and medical care because you have forfeited the knowledge required to provide those things for yourself outside of their digital ledger. Deadwood's inhabitants feared immediate, violent, physical death. They worried about starvation or being shot over a misplaced mining claim. We fear the notification that our credit score has dropped 50 points. Pathetic, isn't it? We have successfully inverted primal fear, trading existential risk for mere social risk. We fear shame more than we fear hunger. We fear the loss of status, the perceived judgment of our peers who are trapped in the exact same submission loop, more than we fear actual physical hardship. Think about that absurdity for a moment. Our entire self-worth is now outsourced to an algorithm that determines our loan eligibility. That algorithm is the new god of the plains. This psychological enforcement is why the system thrives on distraction, chaos, and manufactured conflict. Keep the pets fighting over the kibble bowl. The arguments you see erupting online, the culture wars, the breathless cable news narratives, these are not organic societal fractures. They are precisely engineered surface frictions, designed to burn off the necessary energy required for critical vertical thinking. Stop looking left and right. Look up. The true mechanisms of control operate in a language few people bother to learn. Actuarial tables, regulatory capture, monetary policy, and supply chain logistics. These are boring. They are complex. They require sober, focused, deeply uncomfortable analysis. So we ignore them. We prefer the melodrama. We consume the easy narrative because it allows us to feel morally superior without requiring us to change our dependent behavior. We convince ourselves that changing the political talking head on the television screen is revolutionary action. It is the cheapest form of self-congratulation available. I sincerely doubt that we will ever willingly pay the psychological price of true self-reliance again. That price is terrifying vulnerability. It is the acceptance that if you fail, you fall. No safety net, no insurance adjuster, no government bailout. Just you, the dirt, and the consequences. The modern psyche, swaddled in 400 thread count denial, cannot tolerate that level of exposure. We have been domesticated too long. Our fear response has been calibrated down from the roar of a grizzly bear to the slight vibration of a low battery notification. And look at the absurdity of our labor. Look at the millions of white-collar workers who spend 40 hours a week engaged in tasks that produce zero genuine, tangible value. Bullshit jobs, truly. We exchange 8 hours of our finite life force for an electronic number in a bank account that services the debt which forces us back into the office, which ensures our continued dependence on the system that demands we do nothing productive. It's a perfect, circular, self-sustaining form of slavery. The only purpose of that job is to make you reliant on the salary, which keeps the cage door symbolically locked. We are not just complicit in our submission. We actively defend the mechanisms that enforce it. We complain about the commute, but we'd panic if the office closed for good. We have internalized the rules of our own subjugation. We think comfort equals security. It doesn't. Comfort is simply the bait, and the hook is set deep. You swallowed it whole, and you have forgotten what true freedom even tastes like. It tastes like sweat, uncertainty, and the knowledge that everything you own, you built. That flavor is too sharp for the modern tongue. We prefer bland, subsidized submission. That flavor is too sharp for the modern tongue. We prefer bland, subsidized submission. This isn't just about the office, though. This is the entire architecture of convenience. The great digital promise was freedom. It delivered surveillance. The architecture of our convenience is the architecture of our control. We wanted instant everything, didn't we? The moment you demand instantaneous satisfaction, you forfeit self-determination. You hand the keys to the entity that can provide that speed. And who controls the server? Who controls the algorithm? They don't even need to knock down your door anymore. They just turn off the access. They flip the switch. That's the terrifying reality of our hyper-connected, hyper-optimized existence. Think about that. Think about how much of your identity, your wealth, your memory exists solely on a server owned by a corporation whose motives you fundamentally distrust. It's breathtaking stupidity. We built the most intricate, most beautiful cage in human history, and then volunteered to live in it because the Wi-Fi signal was strong. We did it for the seamless experience. We traded resilience for uptime. If you value clarity over distraction, if you prefer sharp edges to soft denial, then you belong on this channel. This is the community built by those who are willing to look at the fire, not run from the smoke. Now, here is the verdict. The one nobody wants to hear. We will not escape this. We cannot. We crossed the Rubicon of complexity the moment we decided that constant comfort was the moral imperative. We have reached terminal dependence. Every technological advance sold to us as a liberation mechanism is merely a deeper calibration of the dependence loop. The AI doesn't need to conquer humanity. It just needs to keep optimizing the delivery of dopamine and convenience. The moment you are entirely reliant on the seamless function of the machine for your daily needs, for your directions, your food delivery, your entertainment, your social validation, you cease being a sovereign individual. You become a node, a predictable input-output mechanism. You have become an asset, not a person. You are property. The final irony? We call this progress. We scroll endlessly through digital simulations of authentic lives, celebrating connectivity while achieving profound structural loneliness. We mistake the frictionless ease of our lives for fulfillment. The truth is, the system is designed to remove the friction because friction creates heat, and heat creates fire. And fire is how revolutionaries are forged. They want cool, compliant bodies sitting quietly in climate-controlled rooms, pressing buttons, servicing debt, and consuming content until the inevitable end. This silence you hear, this smooth, seamless operation of the machine, that is the sound of your chains clinking softly. The tragedy is that we don't feel the weight anymore. We've grown accustomed to the altitude of our beautiful prison. We argue about the color of the bars, completely forgetting the concept of the sky. The cage is comfortable. That is the genius of the modern trap. Sleep well. Look closely at the cage. It is gilded, yes, undeniably beautiful, but the metal is still steel. The ultimate verdict remains unchanged, immutable. You sold your ghost for convenience. You traded the messy, dangerous business of true self-determination for perfect, predictive stability. It was arguably the worst trade in human history. We did not fall into tyranny, we requested it. We demanded the digital leash, complaining only when the signal dropped for 5 minutes. We became the perfect consumer, Optimized cattle. They don't even have to monitor us actively anymore. They just need to measure the predictability of our desire. The algorithm knows your next 3 moves better than your spouse knows your middle name. Think about that terror. Absolute knowledge equals absolute control. This is the silent war. You cannot wage war against an algorithm that is merely reflecting your own conditioned needs back at you. The lock on the cage isn't external anymore. It lives inside your skull. You are holding the keys, but you genuinely love the view from the inside. This is the great illusion that we bought into. That the absence of physical violence means the presence of freedom. Wrong. Freedom requires friction. Freedom demands effort, risk, and the willingness to fail spectacularly. We chose the opposite. We chose the smooth path to oblivion, mistaking the gentle hum of the machine for the song of our souls. The revolution will not be televised. It won't even be streamed. It will be ignored because the feed is just too compelling right now. Keep scrolling. The brutal, unavoidable truth is this. The machine won because we paid its subscription fee happily. We stopped seeking meaning the moment efficiency offered distraction. You are not trapped by iron gates, but by your own perfected inertia. Your freedom was simply deemed inefficient, a glitch the system finally patched out. The final price of optimization is the soul itself. The most terrifying thing about the cage is that the door was never locked, only perpetually inviting. Look at your reflection on the screen. That is the ghost of the rebel you sacrificed for a battery life that lasts all day.